At the end of 2023, MTH's Premier Line Shays and accompanying skeleton log cars arrived. I originally did not plan to touch on the log cars, but I had some input and observations that don't quite fit into a full review, so instead I'll be lumping the log car observations into this Premier Line Shay short-term review. The MTH Premier Line skeleton log cars were announced along with the Premier Line Shays, as Shays were often used in logging service. The log cars came in several road names and were offered in 6-car sets. The details on these cars are not bad, but certainly showing the age of their tooling. Now, the reason I have for discussing these cars, the couplers. On several of my cars, the couplers do not open or only open with such force it derails the truck before you have the coupler open, while others open smoothly with a light tap on the release button. Normally, MTH rolling stock has superb coupler quality in all of my experience. So this is very odd and something worth noting in my opinion, as it can make using these cars a bit of a troublesome experience. Now, moving on to the main attraction, the Shay. First off, these are expensive pieces, with these 3 truck versions retailing at $1,350 and the 4 truck versions retailing at $1,400. You'll notice that I have my Shay pushing a string of coal hoppers. As I said, oftentimes these Shays were used in logging service, but not all. The model we have here is Western Maryland Shay number 6, the last Shay built and used by the Western Maryland Railway for moving coal, not logs. So let's get started. Shay 6 was built in 1945 by the Lima Locomotive Works for the Western Maryland Railway to haul coal out of the Vindex mine. The locomotive was the last Shay ever made, and as a member of the C-150-3 class, was the second largest Shay ever produced, and it is the largest surviving Shay. The engine was retired from the WM in 1950 and sat until 1953 when she was donated to the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad Museum in Baltimore, Maryland for display. In 1980, the Cass Scenic Railroad of Cass, West Virginia, traded with the B&O to acquire the number 6 for use on their 11-mile-long tourist railroad that traversed the steep grades and sharp curves that Shays, like number 6, were built for. 6 steams on the Cass Scenic Railroad to this day and is commonly referred to as Big 6 due to her status as the largest surviving Shay and the manner in which she dwarfs everything else at Cass. Looking at MTH's 2023 release of the Big 6, we'll start with the tooling. This is an older MTH tooling, but with a number of improved detail parts, MTH has done a good job keeping this model a modern-looking release. I did note that MTH gave this model a larger number plate as opposed to the previous Big 6 release they did in the mid-2000s, and it is far more accurate to the real Shay 6's number plate. The paint job on this model is wonderful, it's vibrant, it's clean, but I do need to touch on the scheme that MTH chose here, as there is a lot of confusion around it and a great deal of misinformation about the correct scheme for an in-service look for this particular Shay. The scheme here is accurate to the 2008 and 2009 seasons on the Cass Scenic Railroad, when Shay 6 temporarily wore the Fireball logo. It is documented at both years' Railfan weekends, and the 2009 trip, 6 ran from Cass to Elkins and return. Many seem to think that the scheme 6 wears now at Cass, and that Lionel recently put their legacy version of 6 in, is the accurate in-service scheme. It is not. It is no less fictional to the engine's service history as a coal hauler than this scheme is. The engine wore a very plain, no-frills scheme when hauling coal from the Vindex mine, which had no striping on the engine or tender. The engine did, however, wear the striping with a Fireball logo when moved under her own steam by the Western Maryland to the B&O Railroad Museum in 1953. So the Lionel scheme from the TMCC era is the most accurate in-service look. The Lionel scheme from the Legacy era is the most accurate, longest used excursion scheme. The Proto-Sound 2 version from MTH is the most accurate 1953 donation run scheme, as this version wears the fireball in the same spot as WM placed it. And this Proto-Sound 3 version by MTH is the most accurate 2008-2009 excursion years scheme, as the fireball's in the same spot as the 08 and 09 years. Now, moving on to the engine's operation. The engine does require 072 curves, unless the drive shaft is on the outside of the curve. Then the engine can tolerate an 054 curve. This engine does struggle at times with Atlas 054 switches, as it can stall on the switch in the little dead zone. It does run extremely smooth at slow speeds, I've noticed. Even 1 scale mile per hour in my testing shows very little speed fluctuation. The smoke output is, as expected from MTH, stellar. This goes for both stack and whistle steam effects. Now, the stack smoke does leak out the underside near the front truck, which can be rather distracting as it's not a small leak. MTH did remove the proto coupler on the front of this model from the previous version, making it a dummy coupler instead. The model's rear coupler is still a proto coupler, however, and can be fired via the DCS remote. Okay, so overall, so far, this model has been amazing, all I wanted and expected. But there's another category to go over, and it's the one I really did expect MTH to disappoint me on: sounds. In the product announcement, MTH claimed, and I quote, "The MTH 3-truck and 4-truck Shay reappears in the 2023 Premier Line fully detailed with digital sounds recorded from the actual engines used at CAS, including the correct 6 chuffs per drive shaft revolution." So then, why does the new MTH Premier Shay not use audio of the 6-beat exhaust of a Shay? Yes, MTH made this exact same promise before with their Shays and failed to deliver then. So yes, I did expect them to fail here, but I had my hopes nonetheless. Thankfully, as MTH's PS2 and PS3 systems allow you to adjust the frequency of the chuffing audio, it isn't as much of an issue as it would be if the model was locked into the factory sound parameters, but the exhaust still isn't accurate. I adjusted the sounds to be 16 chuffs per revolution of the wheel, which does come out to be about 6 chuffs per revolution of the drive shaft, the correct frequency. But it is still a 4-beat exhaust, not 6, which is what was promised and what is accurate to a 3-cylinder Shay. I'm also going to criticize the sound selection for the Shay's other sounds. MTH chose possibly the least accurate air compressor audio for Shay 6 in their selection of air compressor audio. The bell and whistle I will take no issue with, as 6 and the other engines at CAS often change whistles. Just about any whistle is realistic to the excursion era Big 6. And the bell, while not Big 6's, is at least audio of a swinging bell, so the rhythm is close enough for me to accept it. The PFA sequence is very nice, and I actually won't take any issue with the fact that it is a logging scene and not a coal scene. Again, 6 was made for coal service, not logging. However, as this is a scheme accurate to the CAS excursion era, a logging scene is at least accurate to the line that she ran while wearing this scheme.
Move right to the spurs for unloading. Hey Jack, we're settled in the spur. Go on and signal him to start dumping those logs.
So with all that being said, these are gorgeous models, and the sound quality is nice, although not what MTH promised. The operation is very good, with some shortcomings that I would consider minor at this time. How the model holds up over the next year of use now, that we will see.